If you feel like you are busy all day long just putting out fires but not making a lot of progress on your daily to-do list or even your long-term goals, this might be controversial to say, and I don't want to make anyone feel guilty, but maybe we're wasting some of our time on some things that aren't necessarily beneficial to us. And when I talk about time wasters, I want to focus on more 7 common black and white time wasters, things that we would probably all agree are a waste of time and might not recognize when we are doing them. I'm not talking about more nuanced activities like maybe watching television or a movie, or even, I don't know, does anyone consider reading a book waste of time? I feel like the book readers are the ones that consider the TV watchers a waste of time. But I could totally make a case for storytelling through on-screen entertainment. That's not what I'm talking about today. These are all things that we struggle with. And I think when we can actually look at the time that we have and realize that maybe more of it is taken up by these things than we think they were, then it just brings more awareness to our day so we can be mindful about the time that we have. Because sadly, we just don't have a lot of it. We always feel stretched for time. So we want to make sure that we're using it well. If you're new here, my name is Kalyn and we chat about productivity and personal growth and planning tips. And I also squeeze in a lot of Notion tutorials because it's the organizational system that I absolutely love and I feel like you guys are loving it too. So if you like those kinds of topics and want to be on this YouTube journey with me and exploring and nerding out about them, make sure you subscribe so you get notified when I make another video, because I will pop up on your home feed and then you can actually click on it and watch it. That's the whole purpose of subscribing. It takes 2 seconds. Okay, the first common time waster is something that I used to do and I was like, no, I'm just not doing it anymore. What am I talking about? Reading boring books all the way through. Why? Why do we think that we have to finish something that we start? Actually, I know why. Because when we were children, I'm sure it was ingrained in you that you don't quit what you commit to. You finish something that you start before you move on to something else.
Start with it.
Start? Where's finish?
So we've taken those lessons into our adulthood and applied them to books. But I really think reading needs to be an outlet for us. Whether you are reading to learn something like a personal development book or you're just reading for an entertainment escape, I fear that if we force ourselves to read books that we're not all that crazy about, it's just going to have a huge negative impact on our reading life in general. So what I like to do, because I love giving myself rules, I don't know why, maybe it's the type A in me, but I give myself a limit for how far I'm going to read in that book before I decide to just give it the boot. For a Kindle book, it's going to be about 10 to 15% of the book, and then for a paperback, it's about 40 to 50 pages. If I'm getting to that point and I'm like, this is not capturing my interest, then I let it go and don't feel guilty about it, because there are so many books out there for you to read, and instead of stalling you on your reading journey, it's going to help you really cruise through your TBR list. And if you need to, you can always tell yourself that maybe this just isn't the right time for this book. Maybe I need to come back to it later. I don't have to say I'm quitting for good, I'm just quitting for now. Time waster number 2, not having a plan for your day. And I know how tempting it is to just not even make a to-do list or a schedule and really just take things as they come, because what's the point if it's just going to be thrown out the window when real life budges in and all those interruptions. And I understand that it can be frustrating to have a day perfectly planned out and then it just doesn't go the way you want it to. But when you plan out your day, you are saying to yourself, I'm going to be as intentional as possible about how I want my day to function. And sometimes it's going to work out pretty well. Other times it's not. And that's why you put margin in your schedule. That's why you don't time block every single minute of your day, because that's just a little crazy. But you also leave room to pivot. You're not afraid to migrate tasks from today over to the next day, or maybe cross them out completely if they're really not that important. Keeping your day fluid doesn't mean you don't have any structure at all. And I promise that even if you just make a simple to-do list of the top 3 things that you want to get done that day, you're going to feel in a lot more control. Here's a little tip I'm gonna squeeze in here. I really think that making your to-do list at night is gonna be hugely beneficial for you, because for me at least, I feel like I can close out my day before I go to bed, because on my daily planner, I do a little migration symbol, a little arrow that closes out that task for today, migrates it to tomorrow. I have tomorrow all set up. I can go to bed and I don't have to think about all the things that I have to do because they're already written down and captured somewhere. So if you have trouble sleeping and you don't make your to-do list at night, maybe give that a shot. All right, time waster number 3. This is gonna hit us all where it hurts, because again, this is something that I used to do, and actually I still struggle with this, where I'm okay just letting books go. This one's a little bit harder, and that is going after more than one goal at a time. I know, it hurts because we want to improve all the things. And I know that like the first of the year, the fresh start feeling, it's just a clean slate for us to maybe get a few things right this year that we haven't in the past. I know you've heard before that multitasking is a myth, and it really is, because your brain is literally, like, it's so powerful, but it is incapable of focusing on 2 things at a time. There's something called task switching, where it's like focused on one thing, but then if you switch over to another thing, like another browser tab or another project, it throws your mind for a loop. The same thing applies to our goals. If we are focusing on more than one goal at a time, let's say you maybe even think you pick a reasonable 3, a few habits to focus on, a achievement or finish line based project that you're working on, your focus is still going to be spread really thin, and you might not make as much progress on those goals than you would if you had narrowed it down and just focused on one at a time. And I know it's hard to do that. And I'm not telling you not to make your long list of goals. My list is so long because anytime I have an idea, I'd like to do that, I'd like to do that. Well, that's a bucket list item, that's a goal item. I put it on this list, but then I don't try to go after it until I actually have the dedicated time in my schedule to focus on that goal after I finished a previous one. And I use the 6-week sprint system, which I find works beautifully and so much better than focusing on all your goals throughout the year or even on a quarterly 90-day basis. This is just 6 weeks to focus on one goal so you can actually reach that finish line. And I promise by the end of the year, you will have a lot more goals checked off your list than if you focused on more than one at a time. If you want to learn more about that system, I recently published a video about it. I also have a Notion template for you that you can use to pursue your goals. It's a plug and play framework. I think you're going to love it. So I'll leave a link in the description to that video so you can go check it out. Number 4 is another book related time waster, but instead of just reading boring books, this one is reading nonfiction or personal development or business development type books and then not doing anything about what we learned. We might as well just not read the book in the first place. And unless you're someone who can retain everything that you read and you're really good about remembering what you highlight, kudos to you. Read as many of those books as you want. But for the rest of us, I think it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. I am notorious for reading through a book, highlighting a few passages. Oh yeah, that's great. That spoke to me. Oh, I should try that. And then I close the book, put it back on the shelf, and don't remember anything from it. That's why we need to really interact with the material in the book. And that's not just highlighting things. Highlighting is great, but writing in the margins, transferring those notes into a notebook. I have a commonplace book where I add those things. I also try to re-summarize or reword things in my own words, so I'm not just repeating what the author is saying, because that makes you really digest the information and think through it and retain it a lot better. And then any knowledge that I want to save long term that I think I'm going to reference later, although to be honest, I really like flipping through my notebooks and remembering what I wrote down, and really just the act of even writing those things down cements it into your brain, and I can visually see like my notes on the page and remember what I wrote than just reading and highlighting inside a book. But if I do want to retain that information longer, I will transfer some of those notes into Notion. I have a learning library split up by different topics so that when I'm creating content myself, which I use a lot of what I read in my own content because I'm always learning new things, so having those items in Notion easily searchable because it's digital helps me integrate it into some of my content. The other tip I want to leave with you is don't wait until you've finished the entire book and highlighted everything and written in the margins to then transfer it into Evernote or Notion or a commonplace book, because at least I found I would procrastinate and put it off because I don't have an hour to sit and transfer all of these notes. What I do is I go chapter by chapter. I will read the chapter, I will highlight, I will make notes, and then at the end of the chapter, I will go back through and see what really stood out to me, because chances are it's not going to be everything that you highlighted. Because when you're in the moment, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds great, and you end up highlighting almost everything. Go back through, pick out the most important points that you want to remember and apply to your own life. Write down those in your notebook. Give yourself a summary of the chapter before moving on to the next one. I promise you're going to remember a lot more of what to read, because otherwise, then it just turns out to be a waste of time. This next one is a big one, and you probably saw it coming, but they are digital distractions. I mean, yes, we do waste a lot of time mindlessly scrolling on social media. That's something that we all do. But that's not just what I'm talking about. I also think the texts and phone calls that come in throughout the day that maybe interrupt a flow of work that we are doing, or app notifications that interrupt us, maybe even just the number of apps on our phone, because I tend to download a lot and then I forget what I have and I don't actually end up using even half of them. Maybe there's even people on social media that you find yourself sort of like online stalking, not in a creepy way, but just kind of seeing what they're doing, and it's contributing to toxic comparison thoughts. So when it comes to digital distractions, I think it's about limiting the amount of input that you have as much as you can, because we were just simply not designed to have all these constant interruptions throughout the day that just make our minds go a little bonkers trying to keep up with it all. So mute people on social media that you just don't find provide value in your life anymore. Put your phone on do not disturb. This really is not a bad thing. You can get back to people when it works for your schedule. And if you're worried about an emergency that you might miss, there's always settings on every phone where you can have certain people or certain numbers come through that do not disturb message. I would also uninstall the apps that you're just not using anymore, just so you don't have to see them, so they're not digital clutter. Ruthlessly unsubscribe from emails. We get so many emails, you probably don't even touch most of them, or if you do, you probably just delete them or send them to spam. Take some time, I know it's just like 2 or 3 seconds more, to hit the unsubscribe button so you don't, again, have that input that you have to deal with that takes up your time. Because really, all that digital noise is just distracting you from the things you want and actually need to do. Moving right along, number 6, this one I am insanely guilty of. Touching emails more than once, and not even really having an email system, although I do have one now. I just don't always stick to it. But with all the emails coming in, and like I said, ruthlessly unsubscribe in the previous time wasting section, because that's going to help this next part where you're not going to have as many emails to go through. It's really such a good practice to get into, to try to only touch emails once. When you open that email, what do you need to do with it? Do you need to respond? Do you need to delete it? Do you need to send it to spam? Do you need to unsubscribe? Does it have a task that you need to do that you need to transfer then into your daily task list, and then you can archive the email? Basically have some sort of system to process those emails based on what you need to do with them. For me, it's a lot of times having different folders to send those emails into. So I have a few different folders. I have a swipe file folder, which is really just a save for emails that are really like inspiring to me, or maybe I really like the structure of that email for how I compose my weekly newsletters or sales campaigns. I have a to read folder, which all my newsletters that I subscribe to go into that folder. Now, not all of them go in there automatically because sometimes I'm signing up for new ones, but for the old ones, and I'm still working on getting the new ones into the system, I have a filter set up through Gmail where I can just skip the inbox, archive this email immediately, have it tagged to read, and then it ends up in my folder. Now that folder has a lot of unread emails in it, but it's really not a big deal because it's out of my main inbox. And then on a Saturday or Sunday morning when I'm scrolling on my phone and I want to catch up on some newsletters, I can open up that folder and start reading through what I've missed. I also recommend you have a coupon and promos folder that you can just send retail emails straight into. Again, you can use that filter option through Gmail to do that. And then periodically I go through that folder and just delete the sales that are not relevant anymore or the coupons that are not active. I also find it really helpful to have a waiting on folder for things that you are actually waiting on, like maybe online orders where you have the confirmation but it hasn't shipped yet or it hasn't arrived yet. And then maybe travel plans where you again have the confirmation but you haven't gone on the vacation yet. When you're done waiting on those things, then you can go through the email and you can remove that tag and just archive it in the rest of your email system. I use Gmail, but most email services are going to have a really robust search feature, so you don't feel like you have to necessarily organize everything in folders, because most of the time if you're searching for something, you can just type it in the search, like whatever you keyword responds to the emails, and it's going to bring it up for you. The last folder that you may or may not want to have, so I'm kind of torn between this one, is a needs response folder. If you really want to keep your inbox completely clear and get to inbox zero every single day, then a lot of email gurus will say have a needs response folder, and anything that you need to respond to, just shove into that folder. What I found is that I tend to forget what's in there, especially if it's already been read, because if it hasn't been read, then it shows a little number next to that folder that I do have something to respond to. So I guess that's a trick, is make sure the emails are unread before you put them in that folder. But generally, I like to just keep those emails in my main inbox and respond to them in my startup and shutdown routine, which I'll explain more about in a minute. I do, however, have a needs response folder, but this is mainly just for a team member where I can dump emails in there that she can respond to. Now, in regards to a startup and shutdown routine, especially if you have a lot of emails to go through, maybe you own your online business, or maybe you just get a lot of emails that you have to process, having a batch checking time, like sometime in the morning, sometime before you close up shop for the day, is really going to keep you focused rather than just checking that email app constantly throughout the day. Because chances are you're probably not going to respond to those emails throughout the day. And again, you're touching them more than once because you're tapping on them on your app, reading them, and then opening them again. And when you get to your laptop, when you decide you have time to respond to them. So when I sit down at my desk in the morning and start my startup routine, checking emails is one of those items, just to see if there's anything that I really have to respond to quickly, and then maybe some backlog emails I'll also respond to as well. And then around 4 or 5 o'clock, when I'm ready to close up work for the day, then I will check them again, same process, respond to the emails that really require a quick response, and then go through the backlog of emails that I still have to respond to. And I find that that really helps keep me focused throughout the day on the things that I actually need to be doing. Our last time waster, number 7, is a cluttered home. And maybe at first glance you're like, how is that a waste of time? Beyond the obvious, clutter leads to disorganization. Disorganization leads to maybe not finding things. Not finding things means you're actually wasting time. It actually goes beyond that. All these items, these visual distractions around your home that are out of place, are telling you something. They are communicating to you. And I know that maybe sounds a little woo-woo, but go watch the Minimal Moms, the Silent To-Do List YouTube video. It's going to change your whole perspective about clutter, because every single item is demanding your attention by saying, look at me over here, I'm not in the right place. Do you want to sell me? What do you need to do with me? You need to give me to someone else. You need to donate me. You need to pick me up and put me away or throw me away. Like, every single item needs you to do something with it, and that is mentally exhausting. It's no wonder that we can't focus in cluttered environments, because it's all competing for our attention. And when we can't focus, we waste time. So the biggest difference that I think you're gonna see when it comes to clutter is to implement this one tip. And that's to go to Target or Home Goods and buy a really pretty bin that you love, that you don't mind setting out somewhere, that is going to be your donation box. So the next time you come across some random thing shoved in the back of a drawer and you don't really need it and think someone else might get some use out of it, you can put it directly in that bin. Just simply having a place for those items to go makes it so easy on your mind, because you don't have to make a decision about it. You can just say, I'm getting rid of this, here's where it goes. And then when you want to transfer that into like a cardboard box or a grocery bag and drop it off at the donation center, then you can go ahead and do that, but not before driving around with it in your trunk for like 3 weeks, right? Like, we all do that. The other thing that I would implement is an ongoing habit. I have a 10-minute tidy that I practice every night after dinner, and I'm not literally setting my timer for 10 minutes, although you could, and make it a family activity, like how much can we pick up within these 10 minutes? Sometimes games work. But the main reason for this is to just give your home a quick pick-me-up, a quick reset before tomorrow. Maybe wash some dishes that were left in the sink from dinner, put the throw pillows back on the couch, fold throw blankets, get the stuff off the coffee table or that were on counters. Everything that migrated out of their spots throughout the day, use this time to put them back. And I think you'll find that when you have less stuff to manage, you're going to spend less time managing those things. Again, this video is not to make anyone feel guilty or to shame you into all these ways that you are wasting your time. It's more to bring awareness and to recognize when we're doing these things, because in general, if we really looked through our entire day, if we kept track of every single minute, I would say there are times where we are wasting time, and maybe we would have some more time if we were able to recognize when we were being distracted. And I'm not saying you need to hustle all the time or be productive all the time. That's not it at all. Rest is just as much productive as doing work. And sometimes you just need to sit in front of Netflix for an hour and watch a good show. But if there are things like an Instagram notification on your phone that distracts you from what you were doing for like 20 to 30 minutes, or you end up touching your emails multiple times because you don't really have a system to process them, or even if you're trying to slog through a book and you don't end up reading anything at all because you can't imagine picking that book back up, this is at least going to give you a strategy to keep yourself from those distractions as much as possible so you can maximize and take back your time. Don't be shy. Let me know in the comments which one of these time wasters just really hits you the most. I think we can all commiserate with each of these things and know that we're all just trying to be better humans, but thankfully we're on this journey together. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you in the next one.